I wasn't going to make that same mistake twice. And the kids really have great fun with the babysitters. I remember in particular one hot summer's day, we left Matthew shooting his water pistol at the babysitter. And we got into a hot, sticky car and drove over 3 hours up the motorway. And we were just getting a long-distance group started. When we got there, we found 3 people at the training session we were going to do. And it was really hard then to see that group as it is now, as a direct group with the silver underneath. Was it worth leaving the kids? I get asked. Well, you bet it was. And this business will give them opportunities that most children never have. And it's also helped them grow and get a winner's attitude. Now, Matthew's often cried when I've left him. And it's rather strange because he looks forward to the babysitter coming and he's happy 5 minutes later. He just hates that point of leaving. And if he does cry now, the difference is between the sobs he's shouting out goodbye and we are winners. But the trouble is that makes me want to cry more than when he was screaming the house down. Matthew's 5 and he really understands dreams and goals. And although he gets emotional at times, he really wouldn't want us to stop building the business because he wants his father home from work. You know, sometimes he just wants people to make somebody to make life easier for him, and I guess we've all felt like that at times. I know sometimes I felt near to quitting, but it's not that I want to quit, it's that I want somebody to make it easier for me. And when you do feel overtaken by those negative emotions, you need an emotional goal to pull you on. And one of the most emotional for me is to help my parents. Now, 2 things happened to my father which had a big influence on me, on how I saw this business. When Dad was 50, he was made redundant. And that wasn't so terrible, as he got another job very quickly. But in the changeover, his pension funds got involved in a fraud and were lost. So gone was the chance of an early and comfortable retirement. Later on, the second event that happened was when I was expecting Matthew. I remember Chris came to see me at work, and he told me that Dad had had a severe stroke and was in hospital. The doctors thought that he was unlikely to survive many days. So I rushed to see him, and my mother and my brother and I sat beside the bed, and although he didn't know us, we'd be talking to him about the future, about how he was going to be a grandfather. And he survived on sheer willpower. We didn't realise then that we were dream building him. Really, all we were doing was keeping our spirits up. And again, the doctors were pessimistic and said he'd never walk again. But the other day, he walked halfway along Clevedon Pier with the added distraction of his 2 grandchildren trying to throw themselves off the edge. You know, so much for the expert's opinion. You know, experts will always assume that everyone is average. But if the dream is big enough, we can all decide to be above average. Now, Mum and Dad had given up a lot to put my brother and I through school, and they'd just started to have some spare cash and time to do things, but now they wouldn't be able to. So I was determined that Chris and I wouldn't have to wait so long. And also, Mum looks after Dad on her own at the moment, and that's very hard work. So one day we'll be able to pay for someone to help Dad get up in the morning and take some of the pressure off Mum. Our spare income in the future will be able to help us repay just a little of the love and the encouragement we've had from both sets of parents by making their lives a lot easier. Working together building the business has taught us a lot about each other and has brought us a lot closer together. But sometimes that learning process can be quite painful. We've had some spectacular arguments, mostly about hurt feelings. You know, isn't it strange how aware we can be of other distributors' feelings and ignore those closest to us? And I remember Graham Fry saying once that if we treated our spouses like we treat a distributor, then things would go a lot more smoothly, and that's so true. Now, Jan Dodge was a great support to me through those times, and always put things into perspective for me, and taught me to apologise first. After all, it always takes 2 to have an argument. Some disagreements were caused because I found it difficult to accept Chris as our leader. You see, I'd done the same degree course as Chris and Tim, our sponsor, and then we'd all gone on to do similar jobs, so I found it difficult to listen to either of them. I was trying to compete with them instead of appreciating their strengths. You know, in general, men tend to be infuriatingly logical, whereas ladies are a bit more affected by their emotions. The men are best left to make the business decisions with their logic, and I think the ladies' feminine intuition can be invaluable in helping people with their personal problems. But differences do make it difficult for us to understand each other. And one day I began to understand a little bit how Chris felt about my emotional ups and downs when he said that he was learning to look for the trends in my thinking and ignore the inconsistencies. Now, finances can often be a big cause of friction between partners. I had a business background, so I always understood the importance of investing in a business. But I know that some of the ladies find it hard to see the importance of the tapes and the books and the functions. I think particularly if they're having to scrimp and save on the food bills each week. But all I can say is that if you want to be able to stop watching those pennies, then invest in the system. No one has built a large, successful business without it. And to me, time is the most important thing we have. We can replace money, but we can't replace time. And when you use tapes and books and functions to learn and also to teach your group with, then you're buying time. Now, some of our disagreements building this business have been caused by us not listening to each other. Now, if you find yourself thinking that, what are you going to say next? When you're listening to somebody, then you're not listening. And for Chris and I, conversations like that would often end up with one of us shouting. I think one time I found it a more peaceful solution to getting Chris to listen to me. I noticed that when he was talking on the phone, he'd give that person 100% attention. So one day when I wanted him to hear something very important, I went down to the phone box in the village and I rang him. It worked well, and it made Chris understand me without having a shouting match. Relationships do need time and effort to work well. I read Total Woman and For Better for Best, and they helped me understand about Chris and his needs. And sometimes to get more time together, I'd drive and meet Chris at lunchtime. It's a special time for us, away from work and away from the phone. And if the weather's nice, we have a picnic. Or one time we met in a motorway service station, and the kids were just tucking into sticky chocolate puddings when in should walk Pat and Greta and Mike and Di Beasley. I was embarrassed. I was found covered with chocolate. But they came over and they gave us a hug and had a chat anyway. Reaching the pearl level, we've by no means arrived, but we've already had lots and lots of fun building the business. We've stayed in lovely hotels and had great fun. We've been to places like Scotland, Cyprus, the Channel Islands, and Milton Keynes, and other exciting places. It's also given us the chance to spend special time with our upline emeralds and diamonds. And we're very excited about our upline double diamonds, Fred and Linda, coming over this year to Free Enterprise. We learnt such a lot from them when they were over last year. They're such great givers. You know, they've helped 12 people and more, many, many more, gain their financial freedom. Last year we stayed at the same hotel as them, and we saw some of Linda's diamond rings in close-up. Oh, they were fantastic. Well, what of the future? Well, picture this. You're lounging with a warm sea lapping your feet, gently shaded by a palm tree and sipping a fruit cocktail. Beside you is your partner, or maybe some friends, and you're talking about what you're going to do when you get home. Monday morning you'll get up and have a leisurely breakfast. You'll open the post and you'll hand some of the brown envelopes to the secretary to be dealt with. And then you'll play some tennis or golf and have lunch out. And then back home, and you're going to help friends to have the same freedom that you have. To have total peace of mind that no one can control you. To be there for the children whenever they need you. And to know that if something should happen to you, they'll always be provided for. To know that there are always friends to turn to for help, and that we in turn can help our friends. I mean, can you imagine writing a cheque out to a local hospital for an important piece of equipment? With spare income after living expenses, we can do so much to help other people. As Bill O'Brien says, there are very few problems that you can't beat to death with a bag of money. When I first heard someone say that it'd be worth building this business for the friendships alone, I thought, pull the other one. You know, it's the money. But it's so true. You know, the great friendships we've made are well worth the struggles. Seeing Chris and others achieve their real potential, and also gaining confidence in myself. Seeing the hope and excitement come back into people's lives as they realise there is a better way to live. These things really are beyond price. But the best friendship I've made, or rather remade through building this business, is with Chris. You know, he stood by me when I didn't want to stand by myself, So please will you welcome him back on stage.
Our little son, Matthew, does this every morning to me. We come downstairs, he wasn't normally up before us, and he says as I come downstairs, Daddy, are you going to work or staying at home today? Keep it up, Matthew. Well, after we'd been building this business about 6 months, we went through what I think Polly Harteyes once called our desert period. And we'd been building the business at a cracking pace, as you heard before. 3 months, and we'd sponsored one. And it took us a few months to get to 9% level. But I remember going to our first 9% meeting, and in fact it was with Fred and Linda Harteyes at For Enterprise. And that was a heck of a powerful 9% meeting. I just, again, I thought I understood what the business was all about, but the knowledge again went forward, and we really started to, we got to that major function for enterprise together, and it made a lot of difference in the way that we were thinking together. We were working the business at a terrific rate, inviting 3 people a week and showing the plan once every 10 days. And we set our goals every month and never achieved them. I remember Brian sitting down every month and showing us what we could do and how we could break a level this month. And he did that every month. And every month we were at the same level. And I remember saying to Brian one day, I said, Brian, we set these goals every month, but it never happens. He looked at me in a sort of pitying sort of a way. He said, Chris, aim for the stars and you'll hit the moon. I remember thinking I couldn't even find the start button to my rocket. But that's one of the most powerful things that we learned from that experience, is sitting down each month looking at where we wanted to go. You either build this business mad or excited. And I was starting just to get a little bit mad. I learned to get mad one day when it was a Saturday morning, and I think a follow-up pack came through the letterbox. I'd shown the plan maybe a couple of nights before, and I was facing another failure in my mind. I felt that I had to decide which was going to get the better of us. I wanted it to be me. So I stormed out of the house to go and contact someone. I didn't know who, but I thought industrial estates. I thought some people in industrial estates might have a bit more guts. So I drove at high speed to the nearest industrial estate, and it was in Shepton Mallet, driving fast so they didn't have time to think, screeched to a halt, got out, and there's absolute silence, couldn't hear a sound. And then I heard a banging coming out of one of the units, and I walked off, sort of purposefully towards it. And just before I got there, I nearly froze. I thought, what the heck am I going to say? And then I thought of my dreams, and asked myself, was I a mouse or a man? And I walked into the unit and I said, I'm looking for somebody with guts. Have any of you got any guts in here today? And it's not a recommended way, but I can't remember what I said after that. But one of the chaps stood up. He said, "Yeah, I got some guts." And we exchanged numbers, and I contacted him a week later, and he didn't get in. But I came home from that contact feeling on top of the world. I'd looked failure in the face and won. And that really was one of the turning points of the business. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when we're overtaken by temporary defeat. More than 500 of the most successful people that Napoleon Hill interviewed when researching that great book, Think and Grow Rich, told him that their greatest successes came just when they seemed to be one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. It's like the week your upline, books a couple of plan dates for you, and the first 6 people say no, and we're overtaken by temporary defeat, aren't we? Do we feel like giving up? Yes. But do we? No, we push on through the list. And success just comes when we run hard enough. Or the month when we set the goal to do 140 or 6%, and halfway through the month we're not halfway there, so we give up. It's a little like a football team, isn't it? Being 1 goal down at half time. And then they say, what's the point of playing the second half? We might as well quit now. We don't see that happening, do we? Yeah. And, if anything, we've got more to play in the second half, haven't we? Going for the goal and not giving up. Have you noticed the feeling of accomplishment when you stretch sometimes? Maybe like show the plan one more time that week, or maybe the last week of the month, and it all comes together and you achieve what you set out to achieve. Feel on top of the world. Nothing going to stop us now, and that's when we sponsor people. This period, the desert period, was a time of tremendous growth. Not in our group, but inside of ourselves. It reminds me of the story of a little boy at a fair who sees a man letting off balloons. And every time he lets off a balloon into the air, a crowd gathers around him. And the little boy is black, and he comes up to the man, plucks up enough courage, and says, Mister, so if you let a black balloon up into the air, will it go as high as the others? And the chap says to the little, Sonny, it's not the colour of the balloon that counts, it's what's inside that makes it go up. And that... We were learning a lot about ourselves. This business brings us face to face with ourselves. And it takes time for you to realise that when you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at a winner. See at the top, a book by Zig Ziglar outlines very clear success principles that need to be developed in order to succeed. He talks about a stairway to success and the steps that we need to put in place. And we were just beginning to realise that the list of dreams and goals that we'd cautiously developed were real. They were achievable. They still seemed a little way away, but they were starting to become achievable. Dream Weekend, a few months later, another major function. Again, a turning point for our business. This was true because Bill and Les O'Brien, that weekend, they took all the excuses away. I suppose I can remember coming back from that function and we were more focused on our future than ever before. To have the freedom to live as you want to, not to be controlled by anybody else, to have everything paid for, to be able to get up and take the kids to school and not be in a hurry to have to rush off to work, to come back and take your wife breakfast, and get changed, to play tennis, or go and swim, ring up your mates at work, say, hello, splash, splash, identify this sound. To be able to go away for a weekend. And, like we did recently with the kids, a nice hotel with a nice warm heated indoor swimming pool and a sauna, and spend the whole weekend travelling between the pool and the sauna. Get wrinkly. To walk downstairs at 10 o'clock in the morning and look out the conservatory window and see on the crunchy gravel drive maybe your Jag, the Mercedes, your Robin Reliant, just to remind you what it was you used to drive. Be able to travel around the world. There's a lot of the place to see. Although these things were a little way off, Bill and Les O'Brien on that weekend made us realise that they were not pipe dreams. They were achievable, they were realistic, and they brought them closer to it, closer to us. We spent some time there looking at our dreams and our goals and read a tremendous book called 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness. And for the first time, I think, we started to develop a list of goals and dreams that were ours, that weren't what we'd heard off the tapes, that weren't what we'd heard at the seminars. They were ours. They were what was important to us. We were now committed to making them happen. I think that the dream was now hurting. It reminds me of a tape of the week that it's one of my favourites some time back called Desperate Enough to Listen, about Sum Me Up. Because I wasn't listening at the time. I think of Bernie and Janet D'Souza, new diamonds that we should be hearing at Free Enterprise. They went to their first major function, Dream Weekend, just a few weeks after seeing the business, and they understood the business would work. They took everything on faith and put into practice what they learned. 4 years later, they're diamond. It just shows what if you just take on faith and trust, what can happen. And you will have people like that in your groups, and they will grow like that as long as you get the information from Free Enterprise. I was getting close to the point now when our business was starting to take off, which is when I swallowed my pride and my status and eventually became man enough to ask my upline for help. It literally was that simple. I seemed to be able to find the ready-to-receive sign to stick up over my head. I started asking basic questions which allowed me to learn from the wealth of experience available. I was beginning to realise that I was expecting a hard slog to success, and I was happy to work at it hard, but in fact I could choose to work smart. I was expecting, tough times. But as soon as I started listening and I was in touch upline and listening to them, just being humble enough to listen, then things started to move on. Such an obvious point looking back, that we were spending all our time with people who perhaps weren't building the business, who perhaps were saying no thank you, and we were starting to think like they were. And we did that Upline Winners Association like never before. I started listening and really listening to the tapes. I also started to tell the truth when I said to Tim, I'm reading a book, Tim, every day. Yeah, don't put your hands up and say, who said that when they haven't? Yeah. Up to then, I was busy telling my upline what I was doing. Now I stopped talking and started listening. Reading books and associating upline on a more regular basis got my thinking straightened out. And I learned that you become what you think about. That you could literally think yourself into results or into no results. There's a little chatterbox inside all of us. It sits on your left shoulder about here, and you say, I can be direct. And it says, you think so, do you? You say, sponsoring people is easy. And the little chatterbox says, who are you trying to kid? And you say, stick a sock in it, chatterbox. And he doesn't reply. And I couldn't understand what people meant by building mental muscle. But it's like coming out of a wrestling tournament with my own mind. And eventually reading a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, where you read that your mind is like a heat-seeking missile. It needs something to aim for. Sometimes it'll be what your chatterbox says, or it'll be what you want. Depends who wins the wrestling tournament.